and Twitter and Facebook and all of that good stuff. So let us know if you are watching and you are in the chat, and do get involved on anything anybody says. And when we get to the lovely big debate section at the end of this, maybe we might even let you judge it. Hi to Leeds 2021, Marcus M, Annie and Lee Pitts. Welcome, everybody. So this is a Championship 365 show, and you will see some Championship legends here in the shape of Ben HD, Ryan and Justin from the second tier. Ben HD, how's it going? I know we're going to talk about where you were on Saturday, but putting that aside, how are you?
Yeah, disregarding all the football over the weekend, I'm all right, to be fair. I'm all right, but I'm sure we'll get into all that a bit later on.
Ipswich did well, though, didn't they? So, every cloud. Justin, how's it going, fella?
Yeah, very good. Very excited. Obviously, we're going to talk about one of the key topics that have popped up, which has got me excited this week. So, yeah, pretty happy.
And Ryan Dilks, who's coughed his way through the intro. Are you okay, sir?
I'm surviving, and that's all that matters. As long as I'm here, breathing, then I'm happy to talk about the Championship for a bit.
Brilliant stuff. Hellos to Solid Pope, Will, Impulse Productions, Jimmy Panastone, if I've butchered that one, probably not for the first one. Alistair, welcome. Someone clipped me on the review show trying to sing the Elijah Adebayo Luton song.
Yeah, I saw that. You got the syllables
I went too early, didn't I?
On the first bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Elijah Adebayo.
It's magic, Elijah Adebayo. Yeah.
There you go.
If only one of us was a professional musician, maybe we could get this right. Right, we'll get into it. Let's just say a couple more hellos. QPR forever. Sad times to be a whole fan. We'll get to that. Ewan, Matt, Kate, James. I think we said hello to everybody there in the chat. Brilliant stuff. Right. We're going to go all in, first of all, on events at Cardiff. Now, I get in trouble because people think I have a vested interest and a bias either for or against Mick McCarthy. Whatever I say, I cannot win. So I'll keep my powder dry on this one, and we'll just kind of tell you that Mick McCarthy was obviously fired after the 8th straight defeat for Cardiff. Cardiff were a Year 2 parachute team last season. We're hearing all sorts of bits and bobs about the financial situation there and possibly what's going to happen going forward. It's a little bit of a sense that the squad is a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, allowed to rust a little bit since Neil Warnock took them up. And then we also have the idea of who's coming in, who can they attract, and what happens next for good old Mick, who's only 62 and I'm sure can talk his way through 99% of football club owners if he actually gets in front of them for an interview. So let's go to Ryan first. What was your reaction on the slightly predictable sacking, and what next in terms of Cardiff and Mick?
My reaction was, I'm surprised this hadn't happened a lot sooner. I think the international break was the opportune time to actually do it, but they decided to wait an extra few games, and it made absolutely no difference whatsoever. And they've lost a few games of the season where they could have, turned it around a bit earlier. So surprised that it took this long. Had to happen because Cardiff were an absolute mess and still are an absolute mess as things stand. Where do they go next? I'm not sure they're going to get a manager before this weekend, because I haven't seen anything to suggest that anyone has been approached for the role. So it looks like they're going to head into this weekend with a caretaker, which will be interesting because it may give a coach at the club time to give themselves a bit of an audition. I think Steve Morrison, the ex-Millwall striker, was mentioned as someone who may be taking charge of the team, unless someone's actually been announced. I just haven't seen it yet. So that'd be interesting. Who they get in is the obvious question. Chris Wilder is the current favourite. He'd be the perfect person to get in, but is he realistic? Who knows? Does he think Cardiff is too far of a step down? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see on that point. There are plenty of managers out there, I think, who could do a very good job at Cardiff. Plenty of whom Cardiff fans may not be particularly excited about if they actually did get appointed. But the last few managers they've had in have done a pretty decent job before everything went sour at the end. And they weren't exactly the highest appointments on many fans' radar in the first place. What happens to Mick now? My God. Not something I've really considered, but considering his last job before Cardiff was over in Cyprus, wasn't it? I don't think, I'll be very surprised if we see him back at a championship club in the near future. Maybe this is it for him now. Maybe he'll think...
Not one that wears red in Yorkshire, whose manager might be in trouble at the moment.
That's the only club I can possibly think of him going to. But considering they've gone down the Austrian route for the past few appointments, I'm not sure that would possibly work. But apart from that, I think this might be it for Mick McCarthy at championship level. Interesting.
Ben, how attractive is Cardiff now as a job? Obviously, we had this discussion with Steve Cooper, who's sort of essentially chosen in the span of 3 months Forest over Swansea. Not to get into a Swansea Cardiff, but it's a sort of pertinent point because it's a club that did have parachute payments that now no longer does and is in the crowd with everybody else. How attractive is the Cardiff job, do you think? We've seen, we'll get some of these comments up in just a second. Obviously, the Steve Bruce shout is inevitable, isn't it? But, where does Chris Wilder fit in terms of the hierarchy now as well?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I agree with a lot of what's just been said, really. I think that we're all surprised that Mick probably ended up lasting as long as he did after this, continuation of the losses was going on for. I thought that the Swansea game would be the end of it, really. But in terms of who comes in next, I think that I agree Chris Wilder probably would be the ideal here. But my gut instinct says I don't think he takes this job. I think that Wilder perhaps holds out for something else that may come later on in this season or even going into next season. And from the names that I've seen that have sort of been linked to Cardiff so far in the sort of top 10 managers, one name that stood out to me that I don't think maybe will be that popular with Cardiff fans, although I'm not so sure, is Alex Neil. And I think that that's the level that Alex Neil's currently at the moment. And I think that that's the level that Cardiff, dare I say, are at the moment. I think that Cardiff, in the current situation they find themselves in, are in need of a bit of a kick up the backside and someone who's going to come in and be a bit of an impact manager. And I think that that's exactly what Alex Neil is, to be honest with you. His best season with Norwich was his first season in charge there. With Preston, it was exactly the same as well. I think that he worked under constraints at Preston, things ultimately that were sort of out of his control at the end. We've already got one there. I didn't think it would be that much of a popular opinion with Cardiff fans, but I'm still waving the flag for him. And I think that out of all the names that they've been linked to, who I see as realistic for them, I think Alex Neil will do an all right job there. He's wanted Kiefer more in the past at Preston. We were linked to him quite a few times after we sold Jordan Hugo, so I think he'd get the best out of him. And looking at that squad, I think they need a manager who can play to their strengths and maybe not come in and completely revolutionise things. And I think that Alex Neil may be a decent middleman for 1 or 2 years, but yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Justin, when I used to watch Millwall under Neil Harris, Steve Morrison did really stand out as one of these kind of smart on-pitch players. He's moving people around, he's organising the set plays, and I've heard him talk on a couple of podcasts and stuff. Obviously, pretty smart fella. Is there a chance? Is it one of these where they'll let it go past the international break, so we'll essentially get 4 or 5 games? Any chance of a sort of step up through? And I know people will call that the cheap option, won't they? But what do you think?
I don't see why not. It's quite funny that Cardiff are in a position where they need a Neil Warnock or a Mick McCarthy, and they've used both of those cards in recent years. So going with the Steve Morrison or a Michael Flynn, for example, I think Michael Flynn's not a bad shout. Just a younger coach, because this team needs resetting. So going with the same formula hasn't worked. Going with someone like Steve Morrison, I think it's a good choice. As you say, he's quite articulate. He's a leader, and he's very intelligent as well. So I think it's worth a punt, especially in a caretaker role, and see how it goes. The only caveat with caretaker roles, as Ben knows, is doesn't always last very long, or the good times anyway.
I think one thing I'd say is I've seen some Cardiff fans say they don't want to see the long ball style of play, but I can't see how they can play anything else because the players there, it's like giving, a carpenter 24 hours to build a house when he hasn't got any tools. You can only work with what you've got, and you can't go to Aidan Flint, I want you to play out from the back. You can't say to Kiefer Moore, I want you running in behind, even though he has got a bit of pace on him. But nonetheless, you've got to go with a direct manager. So I can't see them going for anything else than a manager who plays a direct style of play. Ainsworth, Neil, Houghton, many managers out there, I think, who could easily just take up that mantle.
Well, Ryan, I totally agree. And again, obviously, having studied Mick McCarthy far too much for my liking in my life, the pattern is when he leaves a club, he often leaves a lot of players who absolutely love him and then don't love the next person, who have been given very simplistic instructions. And anyone who's ever seen Mick McCarthy manage a single match knows that he's moving the chess pieces around the entire game. He's he doesn't sit back and let his philosophy play out, does he? He's a very kind of hands-on manager in game. And we have seen collapses at Wolves and at Ipswich before when Mick has left, with varying explanations that make varying amounts of sense. But Ben, it has happened when Mick has left clubs before. Is the doomsday scenario possible?
I don't know. I think that looking at what they're up against at the moment in terms of the rest of the bottom three with the point deductions that we've got in the league at the moment and the current situations that Hull and Barnsley find themselves in, I do think there is room for another manager to come into this squad and have a bit of a bounce with them. And I think that, we were looking at their fixtures that were quite tough actually on McCarthy, to be fair, towards the end. And I'm looking at their next run thinking a new manager, if they possibly get them in before that next sort of couple of round of fixtures, they've then got games against the likes of, Preston, Hull and Luton. So a couple sides that are around them at the moment and definitely some opportunities to go ahead and pick up points.
Awesome stuff. So lots to go on at Cardiff, and we will watch with interest where Cardiff go next and where good old Mick goes next. Keep your comments coming. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to a little bit of news. Now, we have a Preston fan on, and we have people with some Derby County links here. So there's some obvious news to talk about here. Let's go to Derby first so Ben can kind of lick his wounds a little bit. And do we finally, Justin, have a viable, sensible, non-charlatan purchaser for Derby that could get in there before Christmas and the transfer window opening?
It's a great question, and it's very hard not to get carried away with it based on previous experiences. Obviously, the whole Eric Alonso ordeal was quite a traumatic. Well, actually, it wasn't as traumatic as the BZI one, but the old Eric Alonso saga was just ridiculous, and I think every Derby fan is cautious of that happening. The new linked owner, potential owner, has come out and made a statement, which is quite an interesting tact. I think he's trying to get ahead of competition. His personal wealth is unknown. I know his company's recent revenue has only been 4.6 million a year. I say only, more than what I earn a year, but not enough for a football club.
Are you not making 5 million for doing this, Justin?
No one's paid me.
Yeah, doesn't get out of bed for that.
I'm still waiting for the check.
Yeah, right, me too. Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions to be answered, but what it is it's positive news surrounding the club, which has just been absolutely drenched with negativity, and it's good to see that the new chap Chris Kirchner is very enthusiastic about wanting to buy Derby County, because I think everyone looking from afar sees it as quite a basket case club, which he doesn't, which is good.
Ryan, my understanding is that whoever takes over, whenever they take over, will have a long conversation with the EFL. Then there'll be a plan put in alongside the EFL alongside a possible transfer embargo and a possible points deduction based on stuff that's happened before. So I don't want to rain on anybody's strawberries here, but there is still a chance that the new owner comes in and an embargo and a points deduction could still happen based on past crimes. It's not as simple as someone comes in and, oh, here we go, off we go, let's buy some new players. But the most important thing, I guess, is the administration fire sale that Derby fans have been worried about could be avoided. Am I right in reading it like that, Ryan?
I think the fire sale is still very much on at the moment. The administrators said they want to try and narrow down the shortlist to 3 potential buyers by the new year. And if there is still an administration by that point, then the fire sale, I think, is still going to be very much on. The future is very murky for Derby at the moment, especially with, as you say, a potential another points deduction, a transfer embargo. I think the priority should just be for whoever comes in to just stabilise the club, get rid of this debt if they're willing to do that, and then just look ahead to what happens next. It will most likely be in League One. I think we can all agree that's going to be the most realistic possibility. But if they manage to just pump in a bit of money into the club, then it'll stabilise Derby. And I'd like to see them be more of a club that relies on their own funds, not someone who's just pumping in money and signing players for ridiculous amounts of wages, ridiculous transfer fees that we just can't sustain. I think the owner who's been mentioned, reports are that he's meant to be worth billions. I don't want to see that happening at Derby. As I say, I just want to see someone who's going to pump in a bit of money at the start and then let Derby tick over as its own self-sustaining club, because that's how I see the perfect club being run. You look at Brentford, for example, they're a self-sustaining club. That's the way clubs should go about it, not doing what Derby did for the past few years, because if it doesn't work, we're just going to be back in this situation all over again in a few years' time.
100%. And we'll actually get to that in the next segment about clubs sustaining and various cliff edges and when they will or won't be removed. But hopefully some optimism for Derby. And like you two have said, it's not about, like the thing that's happening at Newcastle where it's a complete sea change. It is about just stabilise the thing and move on, isn't it? Where was that comment? I've looked forward to seeing Ben HD since Saturday. This is because, I think Ryan might be a Blackpool fan. This is because Ben HD was present here. And bear in mind, I've got no room to talk because Ipswich literally haven't beaten Norwich for about a century. So I understand what it's like to maybe not succeed in local derby rivalries. But how was the event and the match and the outcome of the first West Lancs derby in the Championship for over a decade?
Yeah, obviously the build up to the match and everything before 3 p.m. was absolutely fantastic, to be honest with you. As much as I don't like to give Blackpool credit, they do seem like a football club who is both on and off the pitch heading in the right direction at the moment. It's a great atmosphere outside Bloomfield Road. I was in Blackpool a little bit, sort of soaking all that up, and it was fantastic up until 3 p.m. But as soon as that whistle went, there was really only one side in this one, to be honest with you. And I don't necessarily think this was the best we've seen of Blackpool so far this season. I don't think the Blackpool fans themselves would say that. But what we could see was it was a very well-coached side. Each of those players knew their role in that system perfectly. And their two wide men caused us all sorts of problems throughout the afternoon. Bowler, who was absolutely fantastic, had our defenders on strings at times. And Keshi Anderson as well, who was just drifting into those central areas. And our midfielders just wouldn't quite pick up those runners. And it has had quite the effect and quite the damning effect, really, on the whole mood of this season so far, to be honest with you. I think to just sort of gauge the mood around Preston at the moment, literally all you need to do is go to our social media account at the moment, check out all the replies to all the tweets that are going up at the moment. And there are a lot of people that have turned on the manager after that game. And it's a difficult situation that we now find ourselves in, to be honest with you. Obviously, we're coming into this next game now against Liverpool in midweek, which is a bit of a write-off, to be honest with you. I'm expecting us to be sort of chasing the ball for 90 minutes in that game, and that's on the Wednesday. And on the Saturday following after that, we go up against really quite high energetic Luton side, who I'm really not looking forward to playing in this current state that we are in at the moment. But the best example that Preston fans can sort of use of this sort of assistant manager getting the managerial gig that we've seen recently in the Championship, I suppose, will be like Dean Holden getting the job at Bristol City. I think that towards the end of his run there, and what ultimately did him for him and lost him his job was, I think, a run of 2 wins in 9. And currently for Preston, it's just 1 win in our last 9 matches now. Now, the saving grace for Frankie at the moment probably is the fact that a lot of those games have finished as draws, but it does feel a little bit prickly at the moment, and I am expecting the atmosphere at Deepdale to be a little bit sour in these next few matches. And the next few games before the international break, I think, are really big for Frankie and proving that he has got what it takes to deliver in this job, because at the moment, a lot of fans turn him.
Justin, I think Ryan said last week about the South Wales derby, about how a win can push it one way. Are you? What's your reaction to what Ben said about how a defeat can maybe push it the other way?
Well, it's quite bad. Obviously, we spoke to Blackpool fans at the weekend on the podcast, and they were saying how relaxed they were throughout the game, which should not be the case in a derby fixture. Whenever Derby play Forest, there's nothing left of my fingernails. I'm stressed out. It's not a very nice experience, especially when you're not performing well. But they were relaxed, and I think that's a bad indictment as to where Preston are at the moment, especially playing wise. You look towards the end of that game as well, where your captain Alan Brown loses his head for what reason? It's the 96th minute. It's the League Cup tie in midweek, but you've ruled yourself out of it when you should be on the pitch. It's not good, and obviously the club at the moment is probably heading in the wrong direction when it looked like it was heading in the right direction. Frankie McAvoy, I feel for him a bit because I do like him. He's a very likable guy, and I think he is a good coach. But as a head coach, is he the right man? There's a lot of question marks. I think Preston need to find a strategy to find the best out of them as a football club, because there's a lot of potential there. It's frustrating to see from afar that they're not fulfilling that, and they haven't fulfilled that in the past. Ryan,
were you in any way surprised when you saw that result come in and Blackpool took the honours?
No, because I think, as Ben kind of alluded to there, the two clubs going in different directions, really. I posted the stat on the second tier Twitter yesterday that is it only 2 Preston players have played more than who were brought in the summer have only played more than 350 minutes this summer, this season. And I think Frankie McAvoy's not been helped by the recruitments. They've made some signings that just down to sometimes bad luck with injuries, but some just haven't had much of a look in at all. So I don't think they've been helped by that. The thing is, when you promote a caretaker manager who used to work with the old manager, not much really changes, does it? He'll do a couple of tweaks that he would have done himself that the last manager wouldn't have done. But overall, it's just going to be much of the same in the long term. So that's probably an explanation as to why Preston had this upturn in form and Frankie McAvoy was the caretaker. Then when he gets the job permanently, they're just going back to how they were for the second half of last season. So I struggle. When he got appointed, I didn't really think he'd be the man for Preston in the long term. I never thought he'd be taking them to the playoffs, for example. And that's seeming like it's going to be the case now. And I just can't see this lasting. I think it's only a matter of time now before he gets sacked, probably a few more bad results, unless he manages to turn it around. But even if that happens, I still can't see him lasting for much longer, really. And then it's just about who they're getting in the long term. And for Preston, the recruitment hasn't helped, as I say. They just need to stabilise again, which is irritating because it seemed like they were, the level below the playoffs not too long ago. And now they're having to start again. And I don't know where they go from here, really.
Ben HD, should we move on from this segment?
Yeah. I have enough reflection on that game now.
Nice to have the Derby game back. And look forward to the return, Ben. Right, just before we go to the next segment, we had a comment saying, what in the hell is this? Well, what in the hell is this? This is Championship 365, which normally occurs over on the Planet Sport Network. You can see on the ticker down there. We record weekly, and as the ticker catches up, I'll remember the address. There we go, network.planetsport.com. Well prepped as ever, Ryan, aren't I? But you can go and sign up over there. Obviously, all of our content on my YouTube, on Ben's, and down the second tiers podcast streams, all of that content is free and will remain free over there. But we've put this collaboration together. It's the only place you'll find all of us together. You might see two of us sneak together in certain iterations, but you'll never see all three of us sneak together outside of that. So if you enjoy what all of us do, and it will remain free down all of our individual streams, the collaboration, which to be honest is I really, really enjoy, and I get my head down and study the championship. But whenever I speak to these guys, there's always a different angle that I didn't think of that you won't get down and my channel. And I'm sure the guys would admit the collaboration does bring up some good things. So anyway, if I've plugged the living hell out of that, I'll stop now. Network.planetsport.com. We record every Tuesday. And I think over the next couple of months, we're going to stick out a couple of these shows on stream so you can see what we're doing here. But if you do want to support all of our ventures, Ben HD second tier as well, you can do so down the Planet Sport Network. Right. I got in trouble last season for one of about 500 times for referring to certain teams as the Parachute Cartel. Now, what do I mean by the Parachute Cartel? And again, this is no reflection on these teams. This is a reflection on the system. But certain of us have been pointing out certain cliff edges and inequalities in wealth distribution throughout English football for quite a few seasons, let's just say. And it looks like the general sort of football sphere is kind of catching up to the fact that if these cliff edges continue to exist, we're going to get some very, very big problems in terms of competitive balance and things of that nature. Now, I'm not asking the boys for a snap fingers, one thing, fix all. And yes, we do all understand, having studied this division, that the parachute payments alone are not the entire problem. That there's a cliff edge between Champions League and Premier League. There's a cliff edge between Premier League and Championship. There's a cliff edge in the middle of the Championship between the parachute teams and none, and then down to League One and so on and so forth. However, what I will do is just bring up the league table and go figure, everybody. It's not Watford, Norwich and Bournemouth this season, but we have Bournemouth, a year two parachute team who will be in receipt of £35 million broadcast money as opposed to 7 million. Who's going to get 7 million who we can call unlucky? Swansea. Playoff finalist Swansea will get 5 times fewer pounds in terms of broadcast money. And then we have Fulham and West Brom who will be in receipt of £45 million worth of broadcast money. Guys, it's obviously not something you can pick apart with one sort of paragraph of speech, but here we are again, Ryan. You've talked about sustainable clubs, and again, we're not having a pop at the team. Don't hate the player, hate the game. All these teams have budgeted to get relegated and get 45 million quid. It's not their fault. We get it. That's the system they're in. But here we are again, Ryan, with a year two parachute team top, in second place, a year one parachute team, in third place, a year one parachute team, and then Coventry in their own ecosystem, and then everybody else all tied on 21 points, for God's sake. What's your reflection on the financial balance in the Championship looking at that table?
It's depressing, quite frankly. It's so irritating because the only way I can see this going is that we get to a point where the teams who get relegated stay up, go back up every single season. It's funny how we were laughing about the European Super League in a in the summer, and everyone were complaining about that, saying, oh, there shouldn't be a league where there's no relegation happening at all. But we're getting very close to the point now where whoever gets relegated will just end up back in the Premier League in a season's time anyway. And I can't see it going any other way. I think it was all right before coronavirus. I think the pandemic has really meant, the teams who were fighting at the top of the Championship were able to compete on a financial level somewhat with the teams who are coming down, and it wasn't that bad. But then with, the Premier League clubs relying on the money that they were getting from the TV money, that meant that the ones who were stuck in the Championship and haven't been in the Premier League for quite some time, they were just in a mess. And that's why we've seen so many clubs this summer not being able to sign anyone with any money. And most of it's been done with free transfers. So now we're in this situation where unless something happens now, then we are going to see pretty much a defunct league where every single season the teams who get relegated go straight back up. Every so often there may be a team who breaks the mold, but I can't see it going any other way, unfortunately. The only way you can get around it is by having a bigger share of the TV money going towards the Football League. If that happens, then we may start to see a bit more competitive spirit in the Football League, but I struggle to see that happening, because otherwise, your Man Cities, your Man Uniteds will say, well, we don't want to be in the Premier League anymore, and they'll go, toddle off to do a Super League with Real Madrid and Barcelona. But it's very sad, but something's got to change, otherwise I can't see anything else happening, unfortunately.
I'm just going to put this up because we hear this argument a lot. And David, I'm going to respectfully push back against what you've said there. And hopefully you're still watching and can comment back. Parachute payments are crucial in allowing promoted teams to try and compete in the Premier League. Without them, promoted teams will not be able to spend and try and survive. I hear that argument and it feels a little bit like, but he punched me first, so I just punched him back. It feels like that's not detailed enough. What we're talking about is the amount that the parachutes are in relation to everybody else. I don't even necessarily agree that they allow teams to compete in the Premier League, because they just don't get used in that way. You literally don't get the money until 3 portions in the relegation season. I get David's argument that says, okay, you can then finance the contract of the Premier League player because he won't sign for 1 year or what have you. I get all of that, but it seems quite clear, Justin, that the amount of difference between then the broadcast money that these teams get, it just doesn't appear to work now, does it? What would be your thoughts on that, Justin?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I've heard many times that the Stoke ownership, a lot of it comes down to profit and sustainability rules. For example, if Bournemouth stay in the Championship for another couple of seasons, they have a greater margin of error when it comes to what they can spend, because they're going to make a profit this season because they've got an extra 20 million coming in. You compare that to Middlesbrough, for example, can't do that because they don't have that extra 20 million coming in from a parachute payment. Same with Stoke City. And then those profit and sustainability rules mean that those teams that don't have parachute payments can't invest in their clubs. So billionaire owners that own Stoke City can't put that
Ipswich's
money.
owner was worth 700 million.
Yeah, but they spent it on the likes of Lee Martin and
yeah. No, I'm agreeing with you that you're better off having the parachute payment because it's good FFP money than an owner worth 700 million.
True. It comes down to how you use it. But then when you've got teams like Fulham being able to afford contracts for Mitrovic, and then you've got Bournemouth with Solanke. Solanke cost £20 million when he was in the Premier League. Now he's in the Championship. There's such a disparity at the moment. And then the clubs that try and compete end up getting in a mess. You look at Reading and Derby, for example. You look at Ipswich 10 years ago when they were throwing money at everybody. It doesn't work in that way, and it's just a motivation for those clubs to spend way beyond their means. And then they get locked in this situation that the likes of Derby are in now, and there'll be another club that falls into that same trap. And it comes down to the amount of money that are coming out. And it takes away that predictability, doesn't it, as well? When we all do our preseason predictions for the league, who's in the top 3?
Yeah,
it's the teams that have the money.
That's my first port of call, Justin, on the predictions. Who's got the most money?
Exactly, and it shouldn't be the case, and it's just frustrating. And there's no proper solution until the Premier League clubs let go of that drive for wealth because it doesn't exist in football.
So, Ben, if we see this play out this season, it does appear that the door will be open to somebody to get into 6th place or 5th place. Although 3 into 2 doesn't go, Ben, does it? One of Bournemouth, Fulham, West Brom, Sheffield United, even if they have a late run, will not get promoted automatically. And it does feel all of a sudden now that you might get Sheffield United, who have, a brilliant manager and have just get it totally right, and they make it through. Or Brentford, who perform really well for 5 years in a row, albeit with some wealth behind them, but obviously inside the FFP sort of rulings. You're a Preston fan, Ben. If you got in the playoffs, would you think you had any chance of winning them?
Yeah, it's really difficult at the moment. It does sort of feel like when you are not one of those teams, it does take the sort of perfect storm and for everything to completely align for you to even be able to sort of compete with them. I remember doing a little bit of a dig into the numbers for a video I did a couple months ago in terms of the Premier League teams coming down to the Championship and how many of them were actually promoted at the first time of asking. And I think that this has really been a thing that's sort of magnified over the last sort of 2-3 seasons, especially because I think that before that, this thing wasn't even too big of an issue in terms of those clubs immediately going ahead and bouncing straight back up. I think we had quite a few Premier League clubs obviously coming down to the Championship that were in turmoil and that would spend a few years, thinking back to like the Villas, obviously Sunderland and things like that. But obviously different circumstances get taken into consideration there. And what Justin was saying, really, this takes away from the sort of unpredictability of the Championship. And over the last sort of decade, that's been the real selling factor of this league, to be honest with you. We knew when we were, going into Premier League football, who's going to be the top 4 at the end of the season, who's going to be relegated. And the beauty of the Championship probably was those underdog stories. And it does feel like with the changing tide over the past couple of years, and especially with COVID, probably magnifying this for a lot of other Championship clubs, it does feel like those opportunities are going to become sort of less and less. And it is maybe becoming a little bit of a closed shop now, which is obviously sad to say as a Preston fan who's never been in that shop before.
Absolutely. No, well said, guys. And it's never going to be it's not just the parachute payments, it's the inequality all the way down English football. I'm sure, to use Norwich as an example, they've come up in the chat, who financially have been able to be giants in the Championship because since 14-15, there's only been 1 year they've been down where they haven't had a parachute payment. Funnily enough, they got promoted that season. But then they go into the Premier League and all of a sudden they're paupers then there. So we know the cliff edges exist as well. Just on what you were saying, Ben, I've crunched the numbers in the same way you have. And in some ways it is and it isn't relevant because people look at the be-all, end-all of, who gets promoted, who actually gets out. But you and I know that doesn't matter if Villa can come down and have Mile Jedinak on the bench playing 3 games on 40 grand a week. Doesn't matter whether they get promoted or not. That drives prices, like Justin was saying, for every single other club, doesn't it? And people are often keen to give me examples. But this team didn't get promoted. Okay, Bournemouth, they smashed through FFP to do it, as did Wolves, who lost £52 million in a season to do it as well. Brighton, as well, didn't comply with FFP to get up despite running gently. So even when you do crunch the numbers, you can literally pick out the outliers. And then people point at teams that have parachutes and don't go up. Well, my analogy for that is I can invite you to have a race with me. But if you give me a 30-minute head start and I go to Costa and drink a cup of tea instead of using my advantage, doesn't mean I didn't have the advantage in the first place. I just didn't use it very well. And that's not the exception that proves the rule. Anyway, I'm getting very angsty about this. And we all get it that you don't just remove them or whatever, and that changes everything. And hopefully the fan-led review with Tracy Crouch will in some way address this. But we all know, essentially, it's getting clubs that are in the Premier League to vote for having less money. That's what needs to happen to change it. And that's the depressing thing. Anyway, calm, and we'll move to the next segment. Deary me, I sound like a right socialist, but I just want my sport to be even, don't I? Anyway, right, let's do the look ahead. Obviously, we're all fairly chilled because there is no midweek action in the Championship, but some good stuff going on at the weekend. Ben HD, you have picked out a lovely clash between two of the Year 1 parachute teams up at the top of the league. Fulham versus West Brom at 12:30 on Saturday. West Brom had looked a bit unconvincing, but had a good win against Bristol City, and Fulham are scoring a goal every half an hour at the moment. So how do you see this one going?
Yeah, this one is quite the interesting game, really. Obviously, Bournemouth have managed to solidify themselves at the top at the moment, but this is the real battle that a lot of people are interested in between second and third. I think that West Brom have had their issues so far this season in certain types of matches, but I actually think that in this sort of game, West Brom are fairly well equipped in it, to be completely honest with you. Up against those sides who like to keep the ball on the ground, who are going to allow them to press into the middle and things like that. Going back to that game earlier on in the season when they played like Sheffield United, I know they drew that game in the end against Derby, but they had a flurry of chances in that one. Their sort of play style allowed them to go ahead and do that. And I think that the times that West Brom have struggled so far this season is when teams get maybe a little bit more direct with them. I found it interesting that in their loss against Swansea played more long balls in that match than they had in any of their other matches so far this season. So clearly that's a thing that obviously opposition managers are looking into when going up against this West Brom side and looking into this Fulham side. They play fewer long balls than any other side in the Championship. So I can't help but think that play styles matching up against each other in this one. I mean, Fulham have the individuals to go ahead and blow anyone out of the water this season. I think it's fair to say, they showed that at Forest, but I can't help but feel like maybe there could be something in this one for West Brom. Carlin Grant's on a decent run of form at the moment, and with that clash of play styles coming up against each other, I'm split between the two of them. I'm going to be a bit boring for this one. I'll go for a draw, I think.
Get in there. I had an amusing moment the other night on a live stream. Fulham scored and I was busy doing something. The goal comes up and this player comes in and larrups it left-footed in the top corner. And I'm like, oh, Fulham have got Kearney as well, haven't they? I forgot about that. Oh, Carvalho's injured. He's not even on the pitch. Knockhart, he's only been promoted twice and can't get in the team. There we go. It should be a good one there. From one extreme to the other then, Justin, Bristol City versus Barnsley. How can you predict both of these teams to lose this game?
I took the words out of my mouth. Honestly, if there was odds on it, I'd put my mortgage on both teams to lose. You've got Barnsley of the joint worst away record, haven't won a game away all season. And you've got Bristol City who have the joint worst home record, haven't won a home game all season. Honestly, I have no idea how it can go because you go back to last week, Bristol City have been 4 minutes of getting their first home win of the season against Forest, and they collapsed. I'm expecting them to bounce back. I don't know how the atmosphere will be towards Nigel Pearson because I think the tide's starting to turn against him at the moment, as fans quite rightly pointed out in their defeat to West Brom. And then with Barnsley, I mean, fans already want Shop out, but performances have started to improve over the last few weeks. So honestly, I can't call the game. It's going to be a very difficult one to watch for both sets of supporters because they're both very desperate for a win as well. If I was to predict a draw, that would be the obvious outcome. But based on how Barnsley have started to improve, that last 10 minutes against Sheffield United at the weekend as well might buoy them. So I think Barnsley might sneak in. I think the hoodoo will carry on for Bristol City.
-1 is a prediction. I was just going to say, Justin, is there any way you can parlay some kind of bet that says Barnsley will score in injury time? But whether that goal has any relevance on the outcome, we don't know. But it might be to deny Bristol City again. Probably won't be to win the game from what we can see of Barnsley at the moment, or it could just be a consolation goal. There we go. Ryan, Stoke versus Cardiff. Now, you suggested earlier that there may not be a new Cardiff manager in for this one. So it could be Steve Morrison. Stoke have got Tyrese Campbell back, but then immediately lost Nick Powell for a month and a half. How do you see this one panning out?
Well, the obvious angle of it is it's the first match post Mick McCarthy, isn't it? And I've just double checked, and Steve Morrison is the man who's going to be in charge of first team duties for the foreseeable future. And As we've spoken about many times, has been mentioned in the comments, I think Steve Morrison will look at this as a bit of an audition to get the job, really. And he's coming up against a Stoke side who are in a bit of a weird situation at the moment. People may have looked at this and been thinking Stoke must have been really annoyed that, it's the first match since Mick McCarthy's been sacked. They may have the new manager bounce that you're so
favourite
fond
thing.
of, Benjamin. And they probably
I've
will be
already
a bit
done
annoyed
parachute
about it.
payments, Ryan. Don't start me on the bloody new manager bounce. Continue. I'm sorry.
But Stoke are now off the back of 3 straight losses, which is weird considering how well they've been, how they started the season, how much praise they've been getting from us and many other Championship pundits. They have had some tricky games, and they may have looked at this as a sign that as the first game where they might go back onto a decent run of form. But now it's hard to say because without Mick McCarthy, it might be a completely different change of form for Cardiff. So it's a really interesting one. Both teams desperate, obviously, to get the points for different reasons. But it'll be very interesting to see how Steve Morrison does as a manager, assuming he will be in charge this coming weekend.
There we go. And we look forward to all of those games. And all I've got my mind fixed on now is the next segment, which is the debate. So you've probably never seen one of these, but they do get a little bit gory. Remember the end of Blackpool Preston and the WWE Royal Rumble? It's like this from the word go. So what we're going to do, guys, are you all happy for the audience to judge who wins this debate? I'm getting a nod.
They're going to vote for Ben because he's so much nicer than me and Justin.
Oh no! Oh yeah, I was going to say it can't be me. I won't take part. I'll just referee. But so we're going to debate a championship topic. Just before we do this, one thing we should throw into the mix is I've seen all 3 of these guys on separate occasions in the last 2 months have been filmed going into petrol stations, and their pumps on the right-hand side. But they refuse to go around the other side and pull the pump over, causing other people behind them to have to queue up. That's all 3 of them. These are the kind of people that are having this debate. And there will be much besmirching and disrespect. I thought Ben last week, Justin was very disrespectful about the Blackpool Preston derby. I'm just going to raise that with you before we start. So the topic of the debate this week that you are going to judge in the chat is... it's the last minute. It might even be injury time. Corner, counter-attack. And here comes Team A's paciest player running towards goal to make the decisive play in this game. You have one championship player you can choose. You can create the situation anyway. There could be a defender who's gone up for the corner, chasing back. It could be a midfielder covering on halfway. It could be maybe a sweeper keeper coming all the way out to do it. Who do you want going 1v1 against Team A's best attacking player going forward in the last minute? I'm going to get the name of the player first, and then we will let the merriment begin. Justin Peach, who are you sending out to commit this tactical foul?
Definitely not Harold Schumacher. I'm going to pick Max Lowe of Nottingham Forest.
Okay. Max Lowe of Nottingham Forest has been nominated by JP. What are you saying, Ryan?
See, I completely misread the question. I thought we were picking who's going to score the 1-on-1.
Oh, do you want me to go to Ben so you can think about it for a little bit longer?
Yes, go on.
Right. We're going to go to Ben HD, and I'll pad for a little second here. Who's going to stop this 1v1? I apologise. You'll probably send me a screenshot of my WhatsApp that made it totally unclear what we were talking about earlier. Ben HD, I think we all know who you're going to pick because you love him. But, yeah, he might have the same name as you and I, right?
Yeah, there was no doubts in my mind who I was going for. As soon as you popped that message in the chat, a light bulb just sort of went off in my brain. And I thought, okay, yeah, there's no one better at that in the Championship. So my answer is going to be, of course, the one and only Ben Pearson.
Ben Pearson, Max Lowe. Do you need more time, Ryan? Or because I could come up with someone.
Go on then, I've got someone.
Oh, he's got someone. In you go, Ryan.
I'll go for the man who is popularly known as Shinny Esther, but to other people may be known as Graham Shinny.
We've got some good names coming up in the chat here. There we go. I think certain of them for the tactical foul there. Maybe that one, we think. Which Wallace, Murray or Jed there? Okay, who is going to go first then? I suppose Ryan's had the least time to pick his argument, so we'll let him go last. Let's go for Ben HD because he was always going to pick Ben Pearson. Here we go then.
Yeah, well, for me, there's no one that comes close to Ben Pearson for this sort of S-housery in the Championship. I think that if we're talking about this exact situation as well, and I have seen this a couple of times at Preston, which I'll flag up as a few examples a bit later on, but the thing with Ben Pearson is you get 2 chances to win the ball back. So the sort of scenario that I've got in my head, he stood on the halfway line, the opposition player's breaking away. Ben Pearson, first of all, is going to be extremely aggressive in the last minute to go ahead and win this ball back. And should the unthinkable happen and that player knocks it round him, you can bet your bottom dollar Ben Pearson is taking that red card, taking that tactical foul, and completely wiping out the player. And at that stage of the game, you take that, you kill the momentum of the game, that all stops dead. It's interesting that someone brings up Jefferson Lerma because I do think that
I like this.
Ben Pearson has been used exactly to a T almost in this way in Scott Parker's side so far this season. If we look at Ben Pearson's appearances in the Championship, a lot of them have come off from the bench so far. So Scott Parker clearly sees a strength in Ben Pearson's game of bringing him on for those final 20 minutes when Bournemouth are already leading to shore up that midfield. And should a tactical foul need to take place, Ben Pearson's going to go ahead and step in there. He's only had 5 starts so far this season and 5 appearances from the bench. And in that time, he's already gone ahead and accumulated 4 yellow cards. This is a card magnet in the Championship. For 3 successive seasons at Preston, he picked up 14 yellow cards in each of those seasons, several red cards in that time as well. And Ben Pearson is the sort of guy that would 2-foot his own mum if it meant he was getting 3 points at the end of the day. And I don't think we can say quite the same about the other 2 people that have been brought up in today's debate, to be honest with you. And just as a final point, as the last sort of example that I'll bring up of this happening at North End, there was a chance, it was a Tuesday night at Deepdale under the floodlights. Leeds have come to Deepdale. It was a packed out away end. And I just remember Patrick Bamford sort of racing through on goal. His foot had gone back to take the shot. And then out of absolutely nowhere, Ben Pearson comes hurtling in, absolutely busting a gut, sprinting. And at the time where I was in the stand, I thought, oh no, he's taken Bamford out. That's got to be a penalty. He's gone ahead and done it. But when I saw the replay from behind the goal, he just sort of extends his leg by another metre, gets that touch in, no penalties given in the end. He makes that tackle, pressing at a point from it. And yeah, for me personally, no one comes close to Ben Pearson in this sort of argument. So he is without a doubt the best player that you want in this sort of situation. And also, Bournemouth had the best defensive record in the league as well. So that's another point to just drop in there as well. And that's, because of Ben Pearson shoring things up towards the end.
So, yeah, please sign up on the Planet Sport Network just to hear immortal lines like Ben Pearson is the type of player who would 2-foot his own mum. That is what you're going to get. And Ben HD will always take an opportunity to talk about Ben Pearson. Pretty strong start there, Justin, especially with that one-liner. What's your comeback here with Max Lowe?
Max Lowe, yes. Top defender. I once read a quote from Paolo Maldini about making last-ditch tackles, about how if you make a last-ditch tackle, then there's a weakness in your game. And what Max Lowe does is he doesn't make those last-ditch tackles because he's already read what's happening. He's already a step ahead of that 1v1. I know you've just got your notepad out, Ryan, because you're trying to tear me apart, but it's not happening this week. Max Lowe in a 1v1 situation is incredible. There's no winger getting past him, and this season he's averaged over 4.5 tackles per game. He's a step ahead of everybody. The next nearest person is Nathan Thompson with 3.5 tackles per game. Literally, statistically, no one's better in a tackle than Max Lowe this season. So for me, having his intelligence, his in-game intelligence, is a lot better than having someone who's very rash and hot-headed like Ben Pearson, for example. So in that situation where someone's bearing down on goal, firstly, no one's going to get past Max Lowe because he's quick. He's not slow. He's quick. And they're not going to get past him because he's a step ahead. He's already read the situation. So he's already intercepted the ball. He's already started that counter to the counter-attack, and he's set Forest away. And let's be honest, Forest have improved massively since he's been in the side. It's a shame Sheffield United let him go.
Outstanding. Remember, Justin, I'm not judging this week. Justin has a habit of he mentioned Paolo Maldini within the first 10 seconds of his answer. The audience are going to judge it, Justin, but that was a very pertinent name drop. Right. Ben Pearson, Max Lowe, and I forgot Graham Shinnie. Ryan, away you go.
Well, we're talking about Ben Pearson 2 foot in his own mum. Graham Shinnie would scythe down his own daughter, quite frankly. He's an absolute savage. I've never seen a player, and it's become much more permanent during what's been going on with Derby at the moment, that he is the definition of, heart on his sleeve. This man runs for days. He's got lungs like a horse. He does not stop running all day, and he has been a real leader for this Derby team so far this season, and that's shown with the stats. He's made the second most tackles in the division this season, the second most successful tackles as well. He will fly through anyone who stands in his way, especially anybody who dares try to get past him and bear down on goal. He is also deceivingly quick as well. You wouldn't really look at him and say that he is, one of the quickest midfielders in the league, but not only is he got shed loads of stamina, he's also ridiculously quick. And it's been reflected in Derby's defence so far this season. Sure, Bournemouth have got the best defence in the division, even though Ben Pearson's only started 5 of those games, but nonetheless. Graham Shinnie started every game for Derby this season. And despite Bournemouth being, just passing teams off the park, which I feel like is a big contributor to them having the best defence in the league, Derby haven't been doing that. They've been, sitting back and just trying to grind out points, and Graham Shinnie has been key to that, because any midfielder who tries to pass around him, he'll say, right, mate, here's a drop kick. And that's the main reason why I'd have him down as the best player in this situation, quite frankly.
Beautiful stuff. So now we get the opportunity to debunk and maybe you can focus on the character of your opponent as well, which is always my favourite part of the show. Ben HD, have you got anything to say to persuade the audience why perhaps Graham Shinnie or Max Lowe wouldn't be the right person in this scenario?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple things to bring up. The first one, it's the elephant in the room, but we have to go back to that Maldini quote. And whilst in a game situation, I accept that could be a fine point in the game situation, but you can't bring that up when it's a one-on-one and there's no other option but to put the tackle in. You can't get away with being just ushering him out of play or something like that in that situation. You have to go in for the tackle. That's what this is all about. So I can't be having any of that. And I also think that, is he a bit too nice? Is he going to be that sort of person that is going to completely hurtle into the back of someone? He seems like a really lovely guy, which I think sort of takes away from the argument maybe, whereas Graham Shinnie and Ben Pearson in this situation, I don't think would have a problem for going in for that sort of tackle. So then go ahead and debunk Graham Shinnie, Ben. I love a stat on this channel. I was just having a look into the who scored numbers.
Of course you were, Ben.
And I was just having a bit of a dig into the most dribbled past players so far this season. So who's sort of letting players run past them. Currently first in the championship is Philip Zinkernagel of Nottingham Forest, probably to be expected. You wouldn't really think that he's going to put a foot in too many challenges and things like that. Second on the list is Graham Shinnie, who's been dribbled past 25 times so far this season. So he's coming up second on that list. So, that already goes to show that if it is that one-on-one situation, he might just say, nah, go on, get past me. It's obviously happened 25 other times so far this season. So that's what I've got to say on those two. Ben Pearson, always the guy for me.
I feel, Justin, I know you're next in the order. I feel we need to come to Ryan now after that bombshell there about Shinnie. Have you got a defence there to that, Ryan? And would you like to debunk Max Lowe and Ben Pearson as the guy? By the way, I'm so interested that you've all gone for the S-House angle. If this was Premier League, everyone would be like, oh, Van Dijk. He just nip in and win the ball. And you're like, nah, pull the shirt back, make the foul. Ryan.
100%. You've got to go down the S-House angle because that's the only way to go down. That's why Max Lowe is a completely pathetic shout for this particular debate. But the reason why Shinnie is the most dribble pass player is because he's getting in faces. And sometimes he doesn't mind, not taking the ball. Sometimes he will go for a drop kick or a hurricanrana or some sort of WWE move. And most of those people who do go past him, he's usually going back through going through the back of him straight afterwards anyway. And that's why he's perfect for this situation. Sure, Ben Pearson likes to, take his man down with him, but that's the reason why he's only started 5 games this season, I'm afraid, and why he's been kept out of the team by, is it Kilkenny, the young lad who's been kept out of the team? Maybe you should have gone with him, Ben. Maybe he would have been a better shout for this particular situation. But Graham Shinney, starting every game this season for the Derby, he has been a key man for Derby and will happily, take out one of his family members in the process.
I just want to read this from Hin Lee. Steph Joe, clothesline the bastard. There we go. That's a name that's come up quite a lot. Justin, are you hoping to win this debate whilst Ben and Ryan just kill each other in the process and you just nip in to take the win here?
It's befitting of the people that they've chosen who are willing to do whatever it takes for a point. And I tell you, Max Lowe doesn't have to do it because he's going to win the ball. And he's not going to take the man down. You've got both Ben Pearson and Graham Shinney here, who are. Ryan said Shinney was quite quick. He's not. He's not that quick. He's quite slow. I saw Callum O'Hare rinse him several times at the weekend, which
Callum
was not
O'Hare
nice
is
to
also
watch.
very quick though.
Well, there you go. But he dribbled past him, as Ben pointed out. So he's already debunked your theory.
And then switched him using him.
He's already debunked your theory, and this whole taking a foul thing. It's the reason why Ben Pearson's not playing in the Premier League, and there's a reason why Graham Shinney is 30 years old and still a Championship player as well. They're not quite good enough. Whereas Max Lowe defensively, arguably, is one of the best in the division this season so far. Both got beards as well, which I'm going to point out.
What is going on?
Both have got beards, which I imagine, I'm no engineer, can create a lot of drag in situations. So are they going to get back quick enough?
Smooth Max Lowe.
Max Lowe, clean shaven, grade 1 on the top, I think, as well. Aerodynamic, much quicker in this situation. So it's Max Lowe for the win, absolutely. Ben Pearson's used as a 34-year-old see-it-out kind of player, by the way. John Eustace played that role for Derby a lot. And he's being used as someone to see a game out, which is just not how things are done. We're
talking about the last minute, though.
We are talking about the last minute. He's clearly not good enough to start every game. He's not trusted. Max Lowe defends. Max Lowe reads situations. He is the man.
There we go. Guys, astonishing. Absolutely astonishing. Hurricanrana, sweet chin music, beards. And Ben Pearson is the type of player who would 2-foot his own mother. They've really gone in deep. Right. In the chat, everybody, pause for a second and you need to vote for your winner. Will it be Ben HD? Just write Ben HD if that's the case, who nominated Ben Pearson for his last-ditch tackle in the last minute. Will it be Justin Peach? Just put JP in the chat, who nominated Max Lowe and his silky facial profile and grade 1 on top. Will it be Ryan Dilks? Stick RD in the chat there. Ryan went for Graham Shinney. And remember, we are voting on, it is the last minute of the game. You have one player to prevent a goal. They may not be sneaking in and winning the ball, but most of these guys have gone for a shirt tug or a naughty foul here. Right. Only vote once, please, guys, in the chat. I'll let you go around one more time. Can someone count these as well? I've really struggled with this now. Ben HD, just put Ben HD in there for Ben Pearson. Put JP. Why am I not seeing many JPs in there, Justin? For Max Lowe in there. And put RD for Ryan Dilks for the drop kick, apparently. Right, let's have a little look and see who is taking this one. If you come over to the Planet Sport Network, I normally have to judge this, which is a very sad moment. Can someone count these as we go? Right. Ben HD, JP, Ben HD, JP. Oh, sorry, Justin. I'm thankful.
Yeah,
JP, so. JP. Yeah, my bad. Ben HD, Ben HD, Ben HD. Right, here comes Ryan. RD. Ben HD, Ben HD, JP, Ben HD, RD, Ben, JP, Ben HD, back the beards, RD for the wrestling reference, Ben HD, RD for the drop kick. Would we all agree I said Ben HD more times than either of your other names? You two down the bottom there, are you taking that?
Begrudgingly, yes.
JP?
I got a few early ones in, but I think everyone's gone for the lack of art in football with Pearson.
Tremendous. So first off, Ben HD, did you win last week? No, you didn't, did you?
No, I don't
Brian
think
won
it is.
last week, didn't he?
Yeah, it was Ryan.
Well, congratulations. You have won this week. What would you like to say?
Big win, obviously, for the S House merchants in this one, which I'm always happy to sort of fly the flag for those sort of players. But yeah, very much an enjoyable debate. Always my favourite time of the week this time.
Justin, you look crushed.
Yeah, I am a little bit actually, because I think people are ignoring the fact that football is played on the pitch and it's played with a lot of artistic intent, and S. Houser has no place in it, and Ben Pearson should be nowhere near a football pitch.
Ryan, you've lost to Ben HD, but can you find a way to attack Justin in your closing comments here at all?
I wouldn't dream of it, Ben. Absolutely not. I think me and Ben HD were flying for the same party, really. We were flying the flags for the S Houses. So I'm not completely disappointed. I'd have liked to have won, but as long as an S Housery master won, then that's all that matters. I'm just disappointed that people didn't like the image of Graham Shinnie switching music in The Last Defender, but you can't win them all, can you? But yeah, Justin's argument was terrible.
Always in there. And a good old Brian Dilt's pathetic in there. I love the way he says pathetic with such utter disdain for Justin every time. Right, guys, thank you very much. Thank you in the chat for watching. It's been really, really good fun. I'm sure you know already, but where can we find, Ryan, you go first. Where can these fine people who subscribe to me find the second tier in yours and Justin's excellent work?
You can find us at Second Tier Pod on Twitter, also the same on Instagram. More importantly, subscribe to us on YouTube, because we are trying to get big on YouTube, but we haven't done it yet. It's Second Tier Pod on YouTube. If you want to follow me and Justin individually, my Twitter handle is Ryan Dilks1. Justin's is JustinPeach27.
And Ben HD, where can we find your beautiful channel?
Yeah, all the stuff on the Championship, head on over to Ben HD on YouTube for all that goodness.
And I will give a final plug. If you want more of these live, we can't do too many because we are behind the paywall on Planet Sport, but it has been lots of fun. We are here every single week talking about wrestling beards and assaulting your own mother over at network.planetsport.com. But in all seriousness, that's just the last segment, which is frankly very enjoyable, I have to say. But there is a lot, as you heard the boys talking about the situation at Cardiff, great stuff on Derby and the new ownership. Ben present at the West Lancs Derby, me ranting on about financial inequality in the Championship. You can find all of that good stuff, www.network.planetsport.com. Thank you, everybody, for watching us. Say goodbye, Ben HD.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Say goodbye, Justin Peach.
Always a pleasure. Cheers, guys.
And say goodbye, or something about beards, Ryan Dilks.
Goodbye, everyone, and remember to drop kick your mum.